We'll start with a short introduction of ourselves. So my name is Jarosław Stakun. I'm the solution architect in Red Hat. I work in Central Eastern Europe region. And I have together with me my colleague.
Yes, I'm Tomasz Cholewa. I work at Mindbox. I'm a lead cloud architect. At Mindbox, we create modern environments based on containers and OpenShift. And we were supposed to give this presentation in three of us. Our colleague, Dawid Szymański, he works at BZWBK, part of Santander Group. Unfortunately, 1 week before the summit, his wife, who's pregnant, needed to go to the hospital, and Dawid decided to stay in Poland, obviously. Fortunately, I spoke with him 2 days ago. Everything's okay. His wife is back at home, and he sent his regards, and we extend our best wishes to him and his family. I will try to replace him. He's a co-author and a crucial member of the project team. And I guess we can start. And let's start with why. Why are we here? Why we came from Europe, specifically from Poland. We think that we managed to do something interesting, because you probably heard of Docker, about containers, Kubernetes, and OpenShift. And honestly, it's very easy to implement Kubernetes or OpenShift or containers in small companies or startups, but to do it in a bank, that's a quite challenge. So can you actually implement modern deployment pipelines to automate the deployment of your applications? Can you isolate traffic between your multiple applications running on OpenShift? What about images? And actually, is OpenShift mature enough for such enterprises, for such financial institutions? And what about people? How do they react to such changes? How do they react to implementation of such products? So these are the questions that we will try to find answer. So we would like to share our experience, and we'll start with the beginning, and Jarek will tell something more about the customer, about the bank.
Yeah, so BZWK is one of the largest banks in Poland. It's also one of the eldest banks in Poland. However, being old bank in Poland has a bit different meaning than in Western Europe or in US. If you know a little bit the history of our region, you know that 30 years ago we changed from having one party, one bank, one everything into more open and democratic model. And this was the time when the one bank has been split into 9 banks, and BZ was one of them. So their history is 30 years. Over the time, they also acquired other banks. They merged with other banks. So they were also acquired by first by Irish Bank. Then in I think 2011 they were acquired and they joined the Santander Group family. So it's very big bank with few millions customers with different lines of business, so retail banking, commercial, many different. I would say all the typical financial institution areas that they cover. They also so we are part of European Union. So the bank and the financial market in Poland has to be compliant with all the regulations which are created in European Union. We have also very strict Polish regulator who I think adds even more requirements on top of the European Union requirements. On the other hand, we have also quite substantial startups, financial institution startups that are attacking the typical classical bank, so they also have to deal with that. And also from the employer point of view, they really want to attract developers, people, so they want to build and develop solutions using the most modern and advanced technologies.
Yeah, so they decided to start their journey towards those modern environments with OpenShift. And the road was bumpy. There were a lot of there were a lot of turns, and let's talk about some of them. So first of all, like many organizations, they had virtual machines. They had different technologies like IBM LPARs, and they had many different technologies, not only including virtualization, but many software vendors. But first of all, it required a lot of manual work. Development of those applications was very hard. They used different components, so they had to do it in a different ways. Different versions, and keeping those applications compliant and secure was really, really painful. And of course, they needed to change those things in many different places. So David's team, about half a years ago, decided that they want to check what is fast about those containers. Are they mature enough for their organization? They want to change and try to standardize their deployment, their environment. So David's team come up with idea of implementing some proof of concept project, and it was a very good time for this, because bank has also decided that they need to start a project for the front-end applications for all their branches. So they started talking with guys from infrastructure team, and what they found out is that they already started their own POC. That's right. So guys have already been using Docker Swarm, because bank then, it was half a years ago, decided, that the Docker Swarm was something that was good for them. It was one of the most popular orchestrators back then. Of course, they also found out that they already used Docker, because one of their applications were running on Docker in production. Of course, without Docker Swarm or any other orchestrator, but they proved that it works, the container itself, container technology. So they decided to join their forces and go together. They started, of course, with this Docker Swarm and new front-end application. Unfortunately, Docker Swarm turned out to be very unstable. And according to David, well, David told me that they had to reinstall or reconfigure Docker Swarm 2 times. So that wasn't very optimistic. That wasn't very good for platform that would run production workload. And they decided that they want to try something else.
Yeah, and this is really where we as a Red Hat and OpenShift came into the picture. So what they did first, they issued the RFI and asked the question on the market, what are the alternatives to the Swarm that they were using and they were not happy. And they collected many answers, but all of them were more or less related to solution based on the Kubernetes technology. In parallel, we also have been trying to convince them to go with the best enterprise Kubernetes solution on the market, at least in our opinion. Due to the time constraints, because as you can see, they were already in the project, so there were some deadlines, they need to deliver some infrastructure, some solution running. We agreed that we will deliver a POC for them, where basically we will try to migrate their existing Docker Swarm configuration into OpenShift. And we have done that together with Mindbox. It took us some 2-3 weeks, but it was quite successful, so customer was very happy, and the next step for them was to issue RFP for OpenShift implementation. And this is where you click next.
I will. So yes, they decided to choose the best platform and a very solid partner, Mindbox. That was a really good choice. Okay, so we started the project, and we had a couple of things. I will cover some of them. First of all, bank has its own Artifactory, and they decided to use it for all of the container images. It was a good idea, but unfortunately, without internal registry, that's a quite painful experience. So they decided that they will use both external registry based on Artifactory and internal registry. Another problem was that they wanted to have all traffic encrypted by default, so between nodes, between all applications, and they decided to use IPsec for that. Unfortunately, IPsec is a mature technology, but scripts and solutions available for OpenShift isn't well automated, isn't automated enough for this workload, and they decided that they don't want to use IPsec, and they will use a service for automatic generation of certificates that they can use inside application running as containers to encrypt traffic. So this is an ongoing project and requires application change. Next thing is number of clusters they decided to use. So initially, they wanted to have 2 production and 2 non-production clusters. It's because of the reasons that I will talk about later. It's about traffic isolation. Fortunately, currently it runs on 2 production cluster and 1 non-production cluster, so that makes it easy to manage and maintain it. The final approach is to have 1 production and 1 non-production cluster, because that will make things even more simpler. So when we started talking about the project, we wanted to have a clear, concrete goal. And we've come up with a simple goal that says that we want to be able to deploy application into new environment in 10 minutes. So that's a quite concrete goal. Is it easy? Okay, we'll see. But the goal was to be able to deploy application in a new environment for testing purposes or other purposes as well in 10 minutes. So, of course, we decided to use Jenkins integrated with OpenShift and to prepare pipeline for that as well. And yes, we used this Jenkins. We had many problems, I would say. We had many requirements from release management team, and one of those was that the number or the people that are allowed to push deployment further onto next environments needed to be defined in code and needed to be more granular than it could with default Jenkins configuration. So we needed to integrate Jenkins with Active Directory directly. And this is one of the problems. There were, of course, some more. But also initially, we had plan of creating a single deployment pipeline. And we already knew that we will have many integrations with Jira, and what is more important, with Artifactory. And we also struggled with official plugins available for Jenkins. We had to create our own integration based on an official API with Artifactory, because official plugin didn't support it. And there were many, many more. Unfortunately, during our discussion, there were a new requirement came up. Bank decided that they needed to have a separate pipeline for releasing applications. So we wanted to have a single pipeline for each microservice, but they wanted to make sure that whenever you change something in one of those microservices included in applications, they wanted to have automated tests and have a report available to release manager, so that release manager can approve release of applications or not. And we added many more features, including this one with releasing not only application code container images, but also all of the required files for application. Because in OpenShift, you need to describe environment, and you do it by preparing YAML files. So we created such pipeline with those automated tests, with notifications, and so on. And of course, it is all done from code. It is stored in Git repository and versioned, and is used as a reference model for next applications. So, long story short, we did it. We managed to create such pipelines, to create such scripts, so that now bank can deploy, also can create a new environment in 5 minutes. So it is possible, and at the same time, the pipeline itself, this is a release pipeline, but also a deployment pipeline, is compliant with bank compliance rules or security requirement as well. So it is repeatable, it is under control of release management team, and it has some nice graphical interface as well. So when you deploy applications on OpenShift, you need to provide a proper container images, and using standard images from Docker Hub, it is not a good idea, of course. And bank decided that they want to have all of their applications based on RHEL images. So they want to have it secure by default. They want to have updates coming from RHEL, from Red Hat. So they don't want. They decided that they would rather go with sources. They would rather build their own images based on sources using source to image technology, rather than accept container images created by development teams. Of course, there were many problems with security, with reaching those images that were necessary, and yeah, they struggled with proxies, and of course, Artifactory has a support for proxying also images from external registries. So that was David's idea and his project to create also their own builder images for this source to image technology. And they did because they have their own certificate authority, so they wanted to include certificate authority in all of images, so to make it easier for developers to reach other services within a bank infrastructure. And using OpenShift technology, they decided that they want to force secure communication. So they decided they don't want to expose any HTTP traffic. They want to enforce HTTPS traffic only. So it was all about making things easier to developers, and also by making it easy to manage and support by operations team as well. And of course, everything is kept in a code, like this snippet from one of the container images. So how about dealing with those security and compliance requirements? So I have a short story to tell, because it was February the 1st, 2018. It was Tuesday, as I remember. And we got a message on Slack. We used Slack for internal communication between all team members. And we got a message that something's wrong with the cluster. One of the developers couldn't deploy any new pod on cluster. So, okay, we will check it. And we started to diagnose the problem. And what we found out was a little bit shocking, because there were no OpenShift components on cluster nodes. That's not a good thing, I would say. And we started further investigation, and it turned out that one of the guys needed to uninstall package, RPC bind package. It was just a single package. Unfortunately, OpenShift OpenShift packages depended on the RPC bind package. And by uninstalling the single package, all of the OpenShift packages were removed. Okay. Fortunately, all of the applications that were running were okay. Well, we help guys to reinstall those packages, and everything turned out well. But after that, we started talking about why did you have to reinstall RPC bind? Well, because there were some old documents saying that on every node you cannot have RPC bind package installed. Okay, so we started also talking with, we started discussion with security department team, and indeed they had some procedures, and we introduced a new way, a new approach to security, because OpenShift is a new technology, very dynamic. Containers are something new, and the same goes for security. So these two worlds are, well, the old world is sometimes incompatible with this new dynamic container-based world. So we started talking about inspec, about keeping security also as code, as we do with all of the configuration for OpenShift and applications. But I think that what we received a couple weeks after that was even worse, because we got a security scanning report saying that it doesn't look good. There were many vulnerabilities found. The security scanning result came from some proprietary tool. Well, many of those vulnerabilities are easily fixed, and were fixed by changing only configuration. And we were also surprised that OpenShift came in the version that we used with security that wasn't as secure as we thought it was. And many of those vulnerabilities could be also fixed by upgrading. So OpenShift changed many of those default configuration, and also brought more security in next versions in next releases. But what was more interesting is that we discovered many duplicates. We discovered that many of those vulnerabilities are actually duplicates, and that was because we used OpenShift router. So whenever external service or a user wants to connect with OpenShift application, it goes through OpenShift router. And if you have a configuration that is not secure enough, at least for this security scanning tool, you will have many duplicates, because actually it's a single configuration for those HTTPS parameters. So in old world, you would need to configure HTTPS parameters for all applications separately. And imagine that you have similar bug like the one discovered a couple of years ago, which was Heartbleed in OpenSSL. Imagine that you have dozens or hundreds of applications, and you need to patch all of them. It takes not days probably, or maybe, it depends. But in OpenShift, there's a threat that it's a single point of, it's a single point that you need to configure, but at the same time, it's a great opportunity, because you can fix all of those things from a single place in a couple of minutes. So that's what we found out. We changed the configuration and talked with the guys about the security scanning, because that was very interesting, and and fortunately, router allowed us to fix it easily. Another thing is that enterprises and financial institutions require more traffic isolation, and this was also the case because bank wanted to run multiple applications on a single cluster, but with proper traffic isolation. And in OpenShift, you can control outbound traffic. You can do it with egress network policy, and you want to control outgoing traffic. For example, if there is a bug in your application and someone can initiate connection from your application, from your container, you want to limit it, or actually you want to disallow all outgoing connections that are necessary for serving your normal, regular request. Of course, there is still traditional static firewall. Unfortunately, containers are very dynamic, so they have dynamic IP addresses, and it is not easy. It is actually very hard to control traffic using traditional firewall based on IP addresses. So at the same, of course, you want to control incoming traffic, and you can do it in OpenShift using network policies, and this is very flexible method for controlling traffic. However, can you do both at the same time? Of course you should, but can you? No. You can't, prior to version 3.9, you cannot do both. You can control ingress or egress, not both at the same time. That was shocking for us. So, because this is a statement in documentation that was, it states clearly that you cannot, but at the same time, it was a requirement for bank, and we were using version that didn't have a support. In OpenShift 3.9, you can control everything using network policy in very, very flexible way. That's really important, and for me personally, one of the best features that came with OpenShift 3.9. Fortunately, in the version that we used, it was possible to use default isolation between projects, but it wasn't enough. So we came up with something a little bit complex and not easy to implement. So we wanted to use egress network policy, we wanted to use init containers, we wanted to automate it, but we didn't. When we found out that OpenShift 3.9 will be released soon, we decided to abandon the project and to stick with two production clusters. So that's why there are two production clusters, and with an upgrade to 3.9, they will be probably merged into single one. And that's Jarek.
Yes. So, if OpenShift security is your concern, if you want to validate or you want to secure your OpenShift environment, I have a good news for you. So finally, our OpenShift security team has released a security framework that you can use to validate or to implement to secure your OpenShift environment. So this framework consists of 3 pillars that you can see on the right-hand side of the slide. So control, defend, and extend. So defend is about securing the OpenShift infrastructure. So starting from the operating system level throughout the container orchestration up to all the applications components that are provided by OpenShift. Control is about securing your applications and the processes of releasing of your applications. And extend is about the possibility to use large partner, security partner ecosystem solutions that could help you to harden or extend the security features which are provided by OpenShift out of the box. If we look more into the details to the framework, these are the areas that are covered. So in Defend, you see all the layers. So starting from the operating system layer, networking, storage, API management, auditing and logging from both the platform and the application. The good thing about this layer, Defend layer, is that this is pretty much provided out of the box. So when you simply install and run OpenShift, it is already quite well defended. It is still open, and it is open, so it is possible that you harden, extend the out-of-the-box security configuration. It is unfortunately also possible that you mess some things up, so it's better to do it in a smart way. But in general, the out-of-the-box implementation of the platform is very well secured. What you will for sure have to do, and what was really the main part of the project, is the security and the control of the of your application releasing processes. So you will need to manage the permissions for building containers. You should control the content of the container, so what kind of packages are packaged into the container image. You should also manage and control the CI/CD process, so the pipelines itself. And here you can see that we have highlighted the areas that were covered in this presentation and in the project by the
and the problems that we encountered from those areas as well. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So this picture was taken by me, and on the left you see our colleague, my colleague from the team, and on the right you can see Arthur, our director, who sits over there. And this was a part of our retrospective session. And on the board you can see lines showing our moods during the project. So my line is also there, and there were many guys sitting behind me, and there were, as you can see, most of the lines goes like this. There were ups and downs. Of course, this is the start of the project, and this is close to the end of the project, of the first phase of the project. So yeah, the road was bumpy. We had some setbacks. Interesting thing is that this is David's line. This was very different from ours, because his line goes like from down up. So his mood was quite different from ours. So David was a crucial team member, project team member, and you may heard of a buzzword called DevOps. So we realized that what we've done here, so we managed to create awesome platform for developers. We did it with guys working from bank, from different teams. We were helping them. So we realized that what we did was actually a DevOps, because DevOps is not about a tool, it's not about some solutions, but actually doing things right with a lot of automation and a proper approach. So back to the questions from the beginning. So can you create automatic deployment pipelines for application on OpenShift? Yes. Can you secure traffic between multiple applications? Yes. Can you overcome issues, minor or major, of the product itself? Yes. Is it actually easy to do this? Not necessarily. Sometimes it's hard and frustrating, but it's doable. And it brings many, many benefits, not only business benefits. And you can do it not in some startup, but you could do it in a bank. So that's it from us. Thank you very much. And so you can contact us, and please send me an email.